build strength and then express it, and then what it means to taper into a competition. Because like some people think like the taper is going to give you magical like 50 kg jump or something. It's just a small bump in your numbers. Like what if you did, like for example, a successful taper would be something like if you could do 200 kgs on your final week before the taper week, like last heavy session, and then you taper into the comp, during during your taper you will probably get like a good 7.5, maybe 12.5 kilos, maybe. That is like, very good case scenario.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. In some cases you will just get 2.5, maybe the same number, maybe like 5 kgs. Very rare cases I've seen like people get like 15, 20 kgs on like what they could do on the last week. So it's not like a taper is going to significantly change things for like your whole life or something like that.
Can you just like for like people like from like a theoretical, again, this is where like understanding the thing may help people a lot more. A taper is essentially a reduction in the stress to like show the fitness built onto it, right?
Yeah. So basically your peaking sessions or your peaking block is where you are doing a block of training at higher intensities and maybe more specificity than you were used to, which means maybe more volume or maybe workload in SBD, so that on comp day you are having like the best case scenario to be able to show that SBD show up on the comp day. Right? That performance to show up on the comp day. Now that's the whole point of a peak. A taper is going to be like a 1 week, usually a 1 week period, normally a 1 week period, depending on how much stress and like fatigue you've built up from your peak, where you will take a little bit lesser load, like, opener range, or maybe even lesser than opener range, depending on how much fatigue you want to dissipate. And you'll kind of just have mostly fatigue reduction. At the same time, you're looking to make sure that you have just enough stimulus while reduction of fatigue to make sure that you're showing up on the comp day. That's basically what we do during taper.
Trying to bring it down so fitness shows up a bit more, and then
that's it. It's just a super compensation effect that you're looking for during a peak and a taper situation. That's all you're looking for here.
And I think sometimes when people yell out trust the taper kind of a situation, you kind of also want to, I would argue that you may want to kind of ensure the fact that it's not just you like maxing out randomly and then just like reducing stress. You may run the risk of getting detrained in those situations. Like you want to hold on enough stimulus to kind of hold on to strength. Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like maybe like I think again, if people understood that it is nothing magical happens in a taper other than a reduction of stress, so that what you built will show. It's not like magically, it's like random,
And while talking, like initially, you mentioned a point about how people see it online, and then like off the basis of that, they don't understand the taper thing. I wanted to add to that, just like explaining the off season as well, like we discussed previously as well, newer lifters coming in, not exactly understanding, and if they had a little bit more knowledge, they would get that 2 months is not an enough like time period. You only see online what happens as a result of maybe like a 20-week accumulation phase or something like that, where like at the end they show the results and then they make the reels out of it, and then people see the competition reels. So having like an understanding outside of that on actually how you get to that point, because that's just the end point. Like that's something which occurs after the whole process is already finished. The process itself is something that I feel people should know more about on how it actually works. Because like, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but like from the very limited number of programs I've seen from other people, like just random people who try to make it themselves or all, I've seen off-season structuring to be very similar to just comp peaking. Like they kind of make it in a way that it's just like a longer version of that. You don't really see much accumulation comparatively to what you may actually want to see. I feel that's an issue. What do you think about that?
I mean, if the entire emphasis is only focusing on strength expression,
you
may run into a wall at some point, right?
Yeah. Eventually, you'll end up hitting a wall there because you can't. You can't just keep expressing. Like I told you, right? Like one of the guys or like multiple guys that I've coached have had this problem where they were forced to do like five competitions or 6 competitions in a 5-month period, which is extremely high. So we have to consistently keep focusing on like, expressing strength at the end of every 3-4 weeks, right? We don't have an option there. So that's never a good thing when it comes to your lifters or any lifter doing that. They're just going to burn out and they're just going to struggle a lot with fatigue. There was absolutely no real increment in their training, like meaningful progress. Like in one case, all I can think of is like total wise, the guy put on like 40 kgs or something, but his high end actual what he could have put on was something like 60 to 70 kgs more than his actual like previous total. So that 60 to 70 kgs or even 80 kgs that we could put on his total was something that we couldn't put on as a result of him just completely consistently, competing. So that's where we lost a lot of total, right? Like you are losing an additional other 25 to 30 kilos realistically on the total had he just had the opportunity to build into that. But he wasn't allowed to build into that because he had to keep competing so many times. So we had to like just go off of whatever he could do and keep trying to bring that out. That's it.
That is how you kill an athlete.
Yeah, that's how you kill like somebody's
In
like
just passion
interest
as
in
well.
the sport also. Yeah. Because like as passion, see when people say things like, "Oh, you're doing your dream job" or you're something like that. No, even that for that matter, there's a point where it can get too much, and you start getting so burnt out where you're like, because I have like sometimes I'll have people who'll say something like, "Why do you take on more clients? It'll make you more money." I'm already like filled out. I don't want to take more on because any more will be like very stressful for me. Like, of course, I can handle it. It's not like I can't take more. I can't do more. I can
But is the
always do
cost
more.
worth it?
Yeah, but is the cost worth it? Because I'll stop sleeping entirely, even the little bit that I'll sleep. Then what? Like how long can I do that?
Yeah.
I already sleep so less. So then what? Yeah, like after that, what am I going to do? If I take on more people and I start struggling and stressing myself out even more,
The
at
quality
some
of
point
work will
I'm
also
just
dip, right?
yeah. Even
Because
my
you just
quality of
can't.
work will dip. I'm going to stop responding to anybody at some point. I'm just going to be like, bro, I don't want to
It'll
do this
just be
at all.
diminishing returns after a point.
Yeah, I'll just be like, I don't want to do this at all. I'm just done. Bro, I don't care about this anymore. And I'm just gonna like flip, right? So we don't want that happening.
From like an athlete standpoint, also like this is why I track training motivation in the sheet as well. Simply because like as the central stress just starts to build up a lot, right? You may not feel beat up, but you just feel like this haziness in your head the whole time. You don't feel like this element of like wanting to do stuff, and training just becomes like forced almost, and then the buy-in kind of dissipates, and then you're like, oh well, I don't care, right? And again, like I always kind of think about this. Powerlifting was interesting to me because it's data analysis and it's programming at the purest sense, I would say. Like when I
Yeah.
work with an SNC guy or something, you're trying to get general baseline up, right? You're just trying to find the gaps, general baseline up. You are never peaking them into like pure like the skill because the skill performance and like the required ingredients are so separated apart, right?
No, that's
But in
just you.
powerlifting, it's
Like for them, it's just that for them, it's just a sport.
yeah,
That is the skill
yeah,
expression.
yeah. I need to
It's
get
not
away
the
from
what.
the sport. That's it.
Yeah, it is not the work that they're doing inside the gym that's adding to their skill on the
Yeah,
field.
yeah,
That is just filling in a couple of gaps for them to express that a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
Maybe like like build a better gas tank that we talked
yeah,
about before,
yeah.
something like that. But you're not like it's not stimulating work for you as a coach to work with somebody like that because you're just making them do the basics multiple like in
Yeah,
different like so that it's not like when you're dealing with powerlifting it's a bit different because you have like that purest aspect of programming where
yeah.
it's
The
direct
stimulus
skill.
carryover is more potent.
More potent. That's also why like I've never understood when people who do general basic hypertrophy work for anybody like a badminton player and be like, yeah, because of me this guy won nationals. No,
Yeah,
it's not you. You didn't do shit. You just make
like
them do a little bit more extra curls.
yeah.
That's it.
You're in all theory, you're just building their general physical preparedness,
That's all
right?
you're doing.
And
Like
you're
it's
I
just
think like
it's
my
like
primary
90.
objective, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying like the objective there is to just drive enough adaptation on everything and stay away
Yeah.
from it impeding the skill. That is their sport, right? Like, but in powerlifting, the 1:1, like for example, we're never gonna sit here and think for like Ben from Muay Thai. I'll be like, well, can I drive stimulus locally through the leg extension and kind of help him express better like strength on like this day, right? It's just
Yeah.
not. But you for a powerlifter, you can do that, right?
Same thing, like
And
even if you talk about anybody who's into like cricket or badminton, any sport, well, hypertrophy work is just like it's going to carry over a little bit, but it's not a skill
yeah,
Just
expression
an
based
add-on
thing.
mostly.
Yeah, it's just an add-on kind of a thing. It doesn't make them like significantly 1 billion% better. For them, they have so many aspects of fitness that they can
yeah,
focus on. Like they can go do some cardio, they can do a little bit of hypertrophy, a little bit of strength. I mean, both hypertrophy and strength are very similar anyway. But if you're going to be doing any of these things, you're kind of set, and like that'll your main thing is still going to be the sport. So whenever anybody who starts taking credit and they're like, no, this is the reason why this guy started doing so much better. It's because of my thing.
yeah,
Unless and until that specific thing is a bottle cap, which is their fitness overall,
yeah,
then it's a problem. Like if you have a person who can't run,
yeah.
but they're really good at like playing cricket as a batsman, right? But they
Yeah.
can't run. You
Yeah.
get them to run. That's when
Yeah.
that bottleneck is fixed. But that's not like
Yeah.
you are not doing anything, any kind of like excellent
Yeah.
stimulating work as a coach. You're
Yeah.
just making them do a little bit. Whereas powerlifting is a little different that way.
It's
It's
pure.
pretty.
It's a purer sense of like stimulus to impact, I feel.
Yeah, that's why I don't like doing like working with anybody who's just general fitness or hypertrophy, because there's not much to change also. It's very simple basic stuff, and then just regular, focus on progressive overload over time. That's it.
Yeah, because like when you get like, I work with a couple of Muay Thai guys, and they sometimes will ask me, why isn't the program more complex? Like, because they would have come from a guy like making them jump on a Bosu ball and do like sports
Yeah.
specific kind of stuff, and you're like, dude, like we need to get you jacked. We need to get you better, like expressing strength, not top end, just like repeated expressions of strength, aerobic, alactic, like anaerobic work, right? And just some general athleticism through like plyometric stuff. And this should cover. And my job is to not interfere with you play the sport. Like I once had a guy, because like I boxed growing up. A guy asked me like, should I change my punch? I'm like, I am not your skill coach. It is not my place even to remotely tell you should you do this or this when throwing a hook. Like I should not be doing that thing. And like Kaushal said, sometimes like you'll work with a guy and you may talk to someone in the strength and conditioning aspect, and they just overcomplicate the ever living dog shit out of something, and you're just like, dude, you're just making it complex to justify the price you're charging, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why, like, whenever you see Bosu ball stuff, you're just sitting there going, like, well,
Yeah.
Also, like, this also probably comes from the fact where like most coaches feel like they need to change something to keep the athlete with them, because otherwise the athlete will start questioning and be like,
Why
hey,
is
you haven't
everything
changed anything. Yeah, you haven't changed anything in like the last like
I can do
two,
this,
3
bro.
weeks. Yeah. And then the athlete will be like, yeah, it gets a little boring. But like most good coaches, see, that's the thing. Like everything is like a double-edged thing here. Because if I say like, if an athlete is good, sorry, if I say that coaches change it because an athlete may or may not like the program, so they change it so that the athlete will stick with them. That doesn't, and then I say that good coaches will usually keep the program similar and make only meaningful changes.
Yeah.
That usually leads to people being very lazy and not making any changes at all. Right. So you have like, that's the thing. Like everything, there's like multiple sides to the same statement, where like if I say that a coach can be good and not make changes because he knows what to change, but at the same time a coach may not make any changes just because he's very lazy, and then he might just offload everything on the athlete and be like, yeah, I'm not changing anything because you're not doing anything right.
Yeah.
Because there are coaches like that who gaslight their athletes.
To a point, it's your job. Like, I mean, it's like a coach's job to make sure that adherence is the present. Like, if they're doing stuff good. But after a point, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, the adherence part that a coach likes to look into is usually just taking off communication. Like, can you train 5 days a week? No. Can you train 4 days a week? Yes. Then we'll do 4-day program. There's no point in me giving you a 5-day program if you can't train 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about when we talk about adherence. Adherence is like the coach has to understand what your lifestyle constraints are and then try to program around it. But we still try to make your lifestyle much better as as much as we can. Like as we said, like try to sleep properly, eat properly, make sure that you're doing things properly, being disciplined with your lifestyle, things like that. But everything else, as a matter of fact, like adherence doesn't mean like I think like 6 days SBD a week is the best because Austin Perkins does it. So you also have to do it, and then I give you 6 days. But your job just doesn't allow you to go to the gym six
Yeah.
times a week. Like there's no way you can even do that. So then what's the point of me giving you that 6 days a week? There is no point. You can't follow it. I can't give that to you. So there's no point in me giving it to you. So then I have to adjust things into 4 days a week. That's what I was saying before. In situations where you can't train 4 days or 5 days a week, then even 3 days we'll have to see like how I can adjust and see whether we can get an appropriate amount of stimulus and workload being done, throughout the week. That's kind of how we look at it.
Like, can't like again, like people can only recover. I think like people need to understand that, like, again, that SRA thing, as much as like people may think that we're I harp on it a lot. I'd say like I think we're also gonna harp on it. You can only, there's an order of operation. You can only adapt from what you can recover from. Austin, like you saw Elliot Sice and Austin Perkins like have this friendly banter, right? Where Elliot was like, well, you don't have a job, dude. All you do is train. That's 6 days a week for him, right? And like, so like his lifestyle allows for that. And Joe Stanek kind of ordering stress the way it is will allow for that kind of situation to happen. And it's not like Joe does that for every guy, right? Then why doesn't Joe just like, why are there so many podcasts of Joe Stanek just saying like, well, I don't agree with 6 day or 7. Like Agatha's like 7 day SPD stuff. Like people want like it's again comes down to that fundamental like miscommunication on like you need to understand physiology to a great degree, to some degree, I would say, so that you can make meaningful choices. Like Kaushal again, we go on to the thing of like Anthony McNaughton and John Song, right? 3 years, 4 week, yeah. And like
Same program for like 3 years.
yeah, yeah. And now that like if he's the 105 champion, does that have to be like Elliot Sykes, for example? Like he has a pure static emerging strategies type of approach. All right.
Mm.
He's kind of
Mm.
mentioned that thing in his like Instagram stuff. But again, like how many people would you think in India could handle like a static block? All right.
Yeah, most people don't have that kind of maturity.
Yeah, but like someone like Elliot, you can see like Adam Jones can get the most out of Elliot because Elliot understands the process and like can easily buy into it and kind of understands when you like. I would also just say this thing here is like before we come into something like a deload kind of situation, right? Like if you look at when I did the RTS mentorship, you can kind of see like Mike is someone who's an example of like he'll have 3 days, 3 weeks worth of good progress and he dips hard in the fourth week and then he spikes super hard in the fifth week. Like the way he'd structure is like stress index, right? But like when like so Mike knows it's like that pivot block that they have in their system, right? It's kind of fine tuned to his own thing, but you can't apply that to everyone, right?
Yeah.
So like when you kind of come into something like the topic of like a deload kind of situation, right? Like Kaushal, what do you think? Like Tapas, Kaushal, what do you guys think is like proactive, reactive, or like over time it becomes reactive in like proactive in nature?
Depending on the athlete and how they're doing, most likely initially I kind of keep things reactive and see how well they're doing. Where I'm like, we start off week 1, we'll see, and then week 2 we'll see, week 3 we'll see. If the person is doing a very good job with respect to the given RPs, then most likely you will end the block as you intended. But if the person, like, there are two people, like, there's always two ends of the spectrum, right? There's one guy who's like, one person is always going to be somebody who's going to be overshooting. So you're going to have to like react, like, you have to proactively give a deload before
Be a
they
bit
start
more
shooting
top
them. Where they start shooting themselves into the foot, you kind of have to proactively change and give them a deload so that they don't overshoot consistently for a long period of time. And then there's one type who's like, either they're coming off and they're worried not to overshoot with a new coach, or there's somebody who generally doesn't overshoot. So they undershoot a lot. And then you see that, or even on something like a week 5, they've not really pushed hard. So you're like, no, I'm going to push you to a week 6 and a 7 if required. Because I've had like one guy like that. Like the longest thing that I can remember is I had one guy consistently linearly just pushing things for 14 weeks straight. Because I was like, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do RP wise. Like this is too low. And the guy also continued to just keep milking that same structure for like 14 weeks straight without a deload. But that's only allowed because the guy just kept allowing that to happen. Like he kept keeping the stimulus low enough for him to just not have any effects of that fatigue, of any excessive fatigue
able to recover
accumulate
with time.
Yeah, because he kept undershooting also quite a bit. So like 14 weeks or 16 weeks straight, we just kept doing the same program, like the same exact thing, RP wise. And every week he'd just do that, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I increased it by like 5 kgs or like 7 kgs this week. This is what it looked at." I'd be like, "That's still not 7. I wanted to push more next week." And then he'd do the same thing again, and then he'd come back and be like, "Yeah, I tried to push a little bit more, but I wasn't sure. I don't know what this is." And I'd be like, "That's still not 7." So we do again, right? So depending on how they do things, we'll give a deload.
Like if you kind of like from a like verbal standpoint, like the difference in deload intro week, like when do they kind of like cross paths with one another? When would you kind of like separate them entirely?
They're pretty similar to each other in the sense that they're both low RP workload and low volume workload. But one is to introduce you to a new structure, and one of them is to allow you to recover from the previous structure. So an intro week is basically where you give either 2/3 or 1/2 of the whole workload that is intended on a week 1, but you give it as an intro week, which is like an introduction to the new block, where you've made some changes. You have a couple of changes, you have a couple of adjustments, and you want the athlete to just start understanding that structure a little bit. And also you want them to physically start adapting to the structure a little better. So you give them an intro week over there, right? Where it is either two thirds of the actual workload that is meant to be, or 1/2 of the actual structure that's meant to be. Whereas a deload is going to be usually one full week of training where you have to take like either volume cut or intensity cut or even both cut down enough to a level for you to start recovering better, right? That's just usually the way you recover after like a heavy work stress week.
Yeah. And like when the guys use those things like front end or back end deload kind of situation, right? On a principle level, you're just trying to do the same thing, right? You're just trying to create a reduction in stress. And like if you were to kind of think about like front end and back end deload, when would you use them? Yeah, like is there a preferred strategy you have? Do you not stick to either strategy, or like do you have any thoughts on that?
If I'm looking for any multiple training blocks overlapping each other, like where I'm looking for multiple training blocks leading momentum into each other, that's kind of when I'm looking into back end deloading more. Because that back end deloading is basically like where you start deloading in the final week of the block, right?
Yeah.
In that final week of the block, or even within like week to week, you kind of just start adjusting volume as well as intensity in other areas so that it
Yeah.
starts showing up a little bit more on your primaries, and then you kind of just like start adjusting things according to that, right? So for example, if you have your week 4 being like high RP workload, like an RP8 session, right? You have
Yeah.
primaries as RP8. On week 3 you might push the secondaries a bit, and then on week 4 you'll kind of taper that out so that you can get the primaries to move better. And that is usually done when you want primaries to move better, but at the same time, you kind of want to move into the next phase of the block or the next block or the next phase of the macro or the next block in a more like momentum based thing.
Sustainment.
Yeah, sustainment. So what you do is like you have a 4 week structure where you're kind of starting here on week 1, and then week 2, week 3, you're kind of somewhere here, and week 4 you push somewhere above.
Yeah.
If you push too hard, what will happen is that week 1 of the new block, because you ended week 4 of the previous block
So
here,
high. Yeah.
week one of the next coming block has to be a deload where you start much lower. Whereas if you do something like a back end deload, you'll end somewhere maybe not as this high, you'll end somewhere here, but as a result of saving yourself a little bit, you can kind of start week 1 here, whereas week 1 of the first block is somewhere around here. So you're slightly above in the second block, you're slightly above than what it was on week 1, right? So then you have the opportunity to build again, and maybe this time week 4 you'll end a little ahead of what you ended on week 4 of last block. And then because you haven't still pushed to top end max here, you can again on the third block, if you end week 4 here, week 1 again you can start here. Whereas week 1 of block 2 you were here, week 1 of block 3 you're slightly higher, and then week 4 of block 3 you end at a point where week 4 of block 2 you're still slightly higher, but you're still saving yourself. And then you continue to gain momentum like that from block to block. So that kind of a structure is usually where we use block and deloads, where we're not looking to take full-fledged deloads at the end of each block, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like a complete deload is when like you have somebody, like the one person that I can think of that does this is that I have a lifter who does a very good job of using RPs as intended, but he'll also kind of have that mindset of like, yeah, I'd rather slightly undershoot than overshoot, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
No problem with that. But as a result of that, what I can do with him is push him to an RP workload, and he'll still be at RP 7, right? So I can still push him to an RP 8 or 9 and then take a full-fledged deload for him, because he overall isn't accumulating the kind of fatigue by pushing too hard. So for him, that works really well, where I can push him hard and then take a deload. Whereas for like a good number of other people who have a problem with stringing good training sessions together or training blocks together, for them, I will most likely use a back end deload so that they can continue to build momentum from block to block.
So it's like you kind of have to have a solid understanding of the macro cycle objective there. Like you want to kind of look at like not what you can build in like 4 weeks, but what you can do in like a 12-week like objective, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're always looking for long term, no, in training.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be looking for short term either. Unless you have like time constraints or something of that sort, I don't think you should be worried. Like you should be thinking about short term.
Because a lot of people ask me about like what do you look at, like what does a deload, what do you want to do in a deload? And like sometimes people pull all the stimulus out for no reason. Like for example, like I've noticed like a lot of females, like they get these massive deloads and then they'll come into the next block feeling flatter than a pancake because there's just no stimulus in the system for them, right? Like again, as the athlete, like for example, we can't account all women into this situation because you'll have someone like Wallstrom or like Agatha Sitko who like have so much absolute stress because of the load they're exposed to. But if you're someone who's like totaling less than 200 kilos, you may not need this, right? It may not be your thing.
Yep.
It's also
Then any
like,
other topic like I'm thinking,
yeah, I was just gonna say like that's also like why we look at other, like our next thing was what you kind of do in the off season other than just lifting itself, right? Because I'm pretty sure we did cover the point bit on the lack of like just proper off season culture in Indian powerlifting. We just spoke about that completely, right? Just like a point. Do you think there's like a cultural shift as well, like just like a overall mindset shift that you guys would want to convey, that like if we just put out there that should help people just look at things better? Just
Yeah.
like,
So as Jay said before, like you don't want to think of off season as off season at all. You're thinking of in season and comp season. So instead of calling it off season, just call it in season and then off season, right? When you do that, you're incorporating training as a part of your life, and you also have the opportunity to have like regular hobbies.
Yeah.
Like if,
Yeah.
if you want to do something else on the side, like
touch grass.
on your rest, yeah, just go outside, go for a walk or something. Maybe you like going for walks. Maybe you like going for movies. Maybe you enjoy going doing something else. Something that's not like self-sabotaging, something that's not like that has an opportunity to sideline you
interrupt
from
training in that way.
interrupt
Don't
training
smoke
or
crack, for
something.
example.
Yeah, something like that. Just don't do something like that. So you are most likely looking towards doing something like simple stuff. You're just enjoying going outside. You go outside, explore some new place, go to some new restaurant, some shit like that. You just enjoy doing something like that.
Just living life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that you don't feel burnt out on like every single day, like that's so much better when you do things that way. Not like burn out in the sense like you'll start feeling so much better about training days, because it's like it's a thing you're doing then on like you don't feel like you're in the gym 24/7 then.
It's a part of your life, but it's not all of your life. If that
Yeah, and
that
then
gives
you
you
can
the
just actually
bandwidth to once
relax.
make it everything. Sorry.
And then you can actually relax also. You can just be
Yeah.
like, yeah, today is my chill day. I'm just gonna chill out, just settle back, relax, not do anything at all, maybe something like that.
And this kind of mental bandwidth allocation allows you to, when you want to compete, right? And when you want to kind of like make it about everything, you have enough free brain space. But it's the entire year you're like, man, I had a bad week. I'm just going to commit like, like completely atrocious activities. It just becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure.
yeah.
Right.
And this is also like true after I would say like this is it's a point we had on the board as well. Like after a bad meet, especially like somebody has like a super bad meet, them I feel like if they don't handle that well mentally, or just like
Yeah.
after comp, just the way that they handle it, they could get a lot more damage. Like they could damage their progress
Yeah.
after the meet a lot more just by getting in their own head and the way that they react to training if they don't manage it well. What do you guys think about that?
Can I just throw a thing here? Like if you get your ass beat, sometimes you just gotta look as to why it happened, right? You're allowed to be emotional about it, but I think true great athletes will go back to the drawing board and be like, why did this happen? Because there is a lot of information that resides in the data, right? Like if you can think about it objectively. For example, are you consistently overshooting? Is that something you would do? Did you come into the thing burnt out, right? What could you have done better? Of course, you can like crash out on things, right? But like after a while, you just have to kind of think about it objectively, because at the end of the day, like choices resulted in outcomes, right? So like, can you make better choices is what I would argue.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about before also, like the discipline aspect of things, because that's what it means to make good choices, just being disciplined. Like I feel like eating out every single day, but I don't, like I shouldn't. That's just you making better choices. Like yeah, I probably shouldn't eat that, or I probably shouldn't do this. I should probably go to bed on time, things like that. That's just you making better decisions, right? So the better decisions you make, the better you'll perform, and the better you'll perform, the more progress you'll see.
And from a cultural standpoint, I'd say like I was just talking to like Alex Cano, like, and he was just telling me it's like the biggest threat to like progress in the modern world is the internet, because it records everything, right? One bad week and you're like kind of washed. This is where like you kind of have to think like great athletes seldom listen to like people around, like people who don't impact them. Like Canelo Alvarez was the face of boxing for like 10 years. He lost a fight because like in the end you meet a guy you can't beat, right? And like everyone said he's washed, right? So like in powerlifting, it's almost like, well, your week 4 didn't show up, now you're washed, and then you start catastrophizing. That becomes dangerous. I think from a cultural standpoint, you kind of should listen to the people that are actually worth listening to, being your coach and like your friends and family, maybe, right? But random Joe Schmo on the internet says like, haha, right? You could have done better, and you kind of catastrophize on that. And in order to appease these people would be the biggest cultural thing I would like say get away from. Stop trying to appease other people, right? Like if you just want to highlight reel and then you just consistently do that stuff, you're gonna become like a talking puppet for other people, right? And then you'll just lose yourself in the sauce. So stop making everything about like real magnification,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Shit,
pretty
I'm
much.
just gonna I'm just gonna crash out on this thing and say one thing. A lot of these supplement companies compel their athletes to do a lot of dumb shit as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
will just say like, oh, you need to like make a spectacular reel and like again, I'm going on a spiel. My apologies, but I want to say this thing. You see this with stuff like high rocks and all this stuff. Athletes are no longer the focus. Spectacles become the focus.
Yeah.
All right. And that is how you cook an entire sport very simply. Right. Nojo is a great example of this thing. Could the guy beat Rondell? I very well think so he could. Right. But like if it's all YouTube and like cloud kind of a situation, you may run the risk of this thing. I don't think Rondell is the kind of guy who does anything for clout, right? Like in all his years of training, from what I've seen, the guy is just structured. He has his fun. If he has a bad day, he has a bad day in the office, right? But like in India, what I've not noticed is like companies will sponsor someone and says, "Well, my pre-workout, we need a reel about this thing," and the guy goes off plan and just fucking overshoots by like
No,
5
because
RP
the
points.
only way, the most like the people are only so creative. No, they like the
Yeah,
only way they can show that this works is by hitting a new number or something like
yeah, yeah.
that. That's
Based off
basically
of
how
that thing.
you show. Because when you'll take a pre-workout and you'll be like, yeah, because of this new pre-workout, I was able to do this number. Is what you kind of want to say, right? That's the way it works. Because if
Then
it's not
two,
that, then nobody wants to use that pre-workout also. They'll be like, oh,
yeah,
does it work? Does it not work? But you haven't hit a PR, so how do I know it works? Which is why they'll just force themselves. So supplement companies usually throw people under the bus this way. The athletes, like the
yeah.
athletes are just forced to, yeah, they're also
Yeah,
forced to just do something that they're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
yeah, this is where like advertising and this whole thing about like this manufacturing consent, this narrative thing becomes very risky, right? This is why like whenever an athlete like peddles a thing and says my reason for success is because I took this stuff. There's this thing about creatine in India where like people advertise creatine and saying this is the reason why I am the second coming of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm like probably not, dude. Probably not, right? But this is where like again, if you can culturally separate yourself from the internet, you become a lot better, I feel, as a human being.
That's true. And like you spoke about this last time as well, just anchoring it to that is just it's just not.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even say it's not just the optimal one. It's just it's also going to be degrading a little bit.
yeah.
Putting all of your
So
work
this
to
is
that.
conscientious prostitution, dude. Like for a lack of better term, right? You're just selling yourself
Yeah.
in the worst ways possible.
Yeah. And it's socially validated, if I were to say
Yeah,
it like that.
yeah. Honestly, yeah, yeah. That's this is why like when you'll see these guys from Dagestan and like the Caucasus come and they
Yeah.
have no social media and they just come. Nobody's ever heard of them. Their last name is something of, and they just like maul like guys for no reason, and then
Completely
they go
end
back to
them.
their
Yeah.
villages.
On like our list itself, we also had this thing which I think we do not need to discuss right now because we've already discussed this kind of last time, but like it was a major point there. How much you think self-regulation and intervention, like what do you think should be like the gap between self-regulation and intervention when it comes to like a coach-client relationship? Like when would you say that like you should stop intervening and just let an athlete figure things out themselves with regards to trainings?
May I say something here? And it's based on like a comment on like one of the videos you posted, right? If you have access to your coach 24/7, and like the guy mentioned that his coach is willing to be there the entire time, right? There is a risk in that behavior, I would just say, right? Simply because it takes athlete autonomy out of the picture significantly, right? Making decision making extremely difficult, making like an understanding. It's no longer collaborative. I think coach athlete relationships are not purely top down. There is an element of collaboration, and that
Collaboration.
requires you to be kind of self sufficient to some degree, right? So again, I think Kaushal would say this. Like again, any coach with a dearth of experience, like RP is not a perfect science. It is a skill that you acquire over time, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, right? So you would want to give a person the bandwidth to make a couple mistakes on this thing, right?
Yeah.
If you baby them through everything, it becomes very difficult, I find, to kind of get long-term progress because the second you separate themselves from the athlete will start to catastrophize themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think
So
like
yeah.
second, like my point of view as a coach, like when I saw that thing, I was just like, yeah, your coach is gonna hate you soon. Absolutely. Like if that's If you say something like, I love my coach because he's like my brother and I can talk to him 24/7, anytime he'll answer my call, he's going to hate you very soon. You're going to call him randomly one day about some bullshit. Sooner or later, the guy is going to be like, this guy always keeps crying to me about his nonsense. It's not going to work out. It doesn't work out like that. Even friendships don't work out like that, dude. Sooner or later,
dude.
you're going to be like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? All he does is keep crying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who keeps crying all the time. Like, once in a while, you want to vent and sit and be like, yeah, this happened to me today. I'll be like, yeah, I get it. I understand. But if you're not doing anything about the situation, I'm just going to be like, yeah, this guy just loves being in depression. He's not doing anything about it. He's not doing anything to fix his problems. Like, all he wants to do is just cry. So I wouldn't want to talk to anyone like that. But yeah.
And I would say like intervention auto-regulation kind of thing, right? Like even if you don't have the ability to auto-regulate, okay, like if you're working on a combination of pure RP-based programming, well, you need the athlete to have some degree of a high degree of auto-regulating capabilities. If you want to have an RP like percentage-based interaction for your programming, you'd want them to have like a good degree of auto-regulation kind of situation, right? If you kind of have like a load range given with like an amalgamation of load range, RP kind of, you would want them to have this thing. Like if you cannot let your athlete stand on their 2 feet, on 2 feet, at some point or the other, you're not going to be able to carry this person forward.
This
right?
is where like I feel there needs to be like a very fine balance as well. Like with for me, for example, like I like to move people from when they're absolute beginners, suggested loads are like something which is very helpful for them. But moving from that to load caps just as between, and then from load caps to complete, like just letting them choose their own thing. I feel like something like this where like there's like a bridge between that it just helps them just be more comfortable while moving into an auto-regulated structure more. And having this sort of balance, I feel it also just helps it just helps overall because they're able to have that autonomy when they need it. But if you don't have any intervention, that is also bad because I feel like they're gonna want to just stay in their comfort zone. For a lot of people, and in that case, you do need some intervention to like tell them and like just guide them from there.
Like Kaushal's example of like the 14-16 week block guy, right? Like he was actively intervening while allowing that guy to get better at auto-regulate. Did he get better in the end, Kaushal?
Yeah. Eventually understood, like, yeah, we don't want to keep pushing unless the block itself is showing up for that long. We don't want to keep like undershooting so much because you're limiting and cutting off like the amount of overall stimulus you're getting, right? If you're undershooting by that extent to the point where we're taking 14 or 16 weeks for things to actually push to the level we want to push to, then you're kind of like, you're essentially putting down like what 10 to 12 weeks of training aside, sort of. Right? Like where you're actually pulling yourself back and holding yourself back. And only in those last few weeks did you allow yourself to show up a little bit. And now you're like, I didn't know I was capable of doing that. So now I know better.
And like you may look at that and think I've done 14 weeks of progress like in the same way, but probably not.
So
So the one like one thing when it comes to one thing when it comes to this is like the way you intervene or don't intervene is very, very athlete focused. Like the athlete psychology is so important here because the person that you're dealing with is who you're dealing with, and you're going to deal with different people in different manners or different ways, right? You can't just like that's the thing. Like people will see sometimes they'll be like, oh, this guy's very strict, but I'm only strict with the people who need that. And then there'll be some people who'll genuinely have problems, and I'll genuinely be empathetic towards them. I'll be like, yeah, I totally understand what's happening right now. There is no problem at all. You can take.
You can't have like a one size fits all for this.
No, you can't do that. It's not possible to do that. Like and depending on that also, like you kind of have to draw boundaries and not draw boundaries. Sometimes you have to talk, sometimes you shouldn't talk. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, especially with athletes who are very neurotic, you're enabling them even further by sitting and having conversations. Sometimes you just have to shake them and be like, shut the fuck up.
I made that mistake.
I like that. Because like I also used to do that, like where like there'd be athletes who'd get like extremely neurotic and they'd be like, I don't know what to do, and I'll be like, it's okay, I'll help you, I'll fix it for you, right? And then one time I was just like, every single time this person thinks that they can do this and get away with it because I'm allowing them to do it. And I'm allowing them, and I'm telling them that I'll fix it, don't worry. Anytime something happens to you, I'll fix it, don't worry. So eventually, like one time when the same thing happened, I was just like, okay, I'm not doing anything about it, you fix it. And then they were just like, but how do I do that? I was like, you'll figure it out. Just like how I figure it out, you'll figure it out. And then sooner or later, they understood and they stopped. They stopped making that mistake. Like it took them much shorter period of time than me sitting and hand holding for them to just figure it out themselves. Like they were just like, okay, I guess I just need to stop doing this and that'll stop happening. Like that's all he does, right? Like so, and then they figured it out, and then they stopped doing it. So they stopped being as neurotic. They're still neurotic to some degree, but not to that degree as they were before. So you
Before,
kind of like allow that neuroticism to occur and then push them towards that.
I think that was like one of my biggest failures. Like when I was coaching someone, it's just I thought I could kind of handhold them to the end, and then I just
Yeah, you
realized,
can't do that.
yeah.
You can't do that for everybody. It's not
And I would
possible.
also say there's like a cultural thing like between countries. Like when I was abroad, like I would notice like people were independent a lot longer, like a lot younger age. Here, like a lot of guys are like mama's boys, right? Like they need everything kind of like fed to them kind of situation. And like that, the sooner you can create that independence, the better they become, right? I think independence allows you to also accept consequences. I think that is probably one of the most important. Dependence allows you to share consequences. Independence allows you to bear them. And like I think that is like a thing, like, because at the end of the like Norman recently tagged me in this stuff because he was roasting me in one of our calls where he was just like, well, like Jay, decision making, like it's at the end of the day, it's always going to be informed decision making. And I was thinking, dude, I'm looking at it only as a coach decision making. The athlete also needs to develop that skill, right? I'm sure, like Tapas, when you work with Kaushal, there'll be weeks where you may repeat a load and see, can I clean this thing up?
Yeah.
Right? It's just good decision making kind of situation, right? Because you're like, load progression isn't the only way I can progress, right?
Yeah, technique especially, movement quality
Yeah.
improving, that has been
Yeah.
kind of focus. And I feel that is also something to keep in mind. Like, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this multiple times. I don't really want to, but like, yeah, load progression is not the only thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, do you guys think, especially Kaushal, just with your experience, I think there's like certain people, certain exceptions where you feel like you always need to intervene, and do you think that's like worth it keeping them on? Like, there's certain, I don't know, personality types or like just people.
Yeah, I mean, it depends entirely on the kind of person you're dealing with. See, even people are not like, they're not rigid, right? They keep changing from time to time. Sometimes they need that, sometimes they don't need that. So you're always going to be, depending on how they're currently doing, you kind of have to, you decide whether to intervene or not intervene. You can't like give a, like an absolute answer in this situation and be like, yeah, I mean, I always have to intervene with this guy, or I don't have to intervene with this guy. Most of the time, if the athlete is doing well, you don't have to intervene too much. And if the athlete is doing somewhat good, somewhat bad, that's when you intervene more. If an athlete is doing really bad all the time, then they're just self-sabotaging. There you have to intervene once or twice, and then after that point, you have to understand that there's no point in you intervening anymore. Like that's where you probably have to pull back and say that
There's like a limit to what you can
I've
do.
done everything I can. I don't think I can help you anymore.
I want to say something so corny here, but like I feel like y'all both hate me for this stuff. So I won't like
Just
it
go on.
involves Drake. No, it involves Drake. Like you
Hell
can't
no.
save you can't save every person in distress, dude. Right?
Yeah.
It's-
No, there's that thing, no, like even God doesn't help someone who can't help themselves.
yeah, absolutely. Man,
Yeah, it's like that.
like I would say this, like I am nowhere near as experienced as Kaushal. I think I've been a couple months ahead of like Tapas in terms of coaching. So I'm like somewhere like in this, and I would say like this is the biggest mistake I made. Like if I could go back to myself and I'd say like there are some souls you cannot like do anything about. Right?
Yeah, some
that's kind of
people
what my point was.
are not coachable at all.
And
There is no way.
I'll say this, hey Kaushal, like remember like the last time like I crashed out, like I just told you, right? Like every single thing, like dude, everything. I wrote everything out. I typed everything out. I sent videos. I did everything. And in the end, they would still like not do this thing. And you're like, you just cannot save this human being, right? Not as a human, but like as an athlete, you're like, not everyone's meant to be a high level athlete, dude. Like if you come to the aspiration of saying I want to go nationals, but you like do dumb shit like 8 days of the week, right? There's nothing I can do.
Yeah. There's nothing we can you can't outprogram stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't outprogram stupidity.
Dude, the crash shot I had was like hilarious, dude. I just told them like I want to like sell everything and move to the mountains.
No, because like you're doing your part, you're putting your effort, and then you don't see the result because it's also your job. Also, that's like kind of.
And you just don't want to like I didn't just want to like take his cash and just like feel like I was failing the guy.
I mean,
but then
people
I realized
with
like I'm
integrity are
failing
like
him.
that. No, you don't feel like you feel like you can't fail because you're getting paid for that.
Yeah.
So you try your best to make it happen, but when the person themselves they don't do it or they're not making it happen, there's not so much you can do. You kind of have to be objective about these things and be like, yeah, I tried my best. I don't think I can do anything more than this. Like if you genuinely tried, then you have to,
accept it at a point.
Just accept it at one point and be like, yeah, I mean, that's about it. I tried. I can't do anything more than that.
Yeah, that's like I would say that's my biggest failure. Like that was truly my biggest failure to a point where like even Norman once told me like you're giving 90% of your energy to a single human on your roster, right? That will kill the remaining like 90% of your roster because you can only give them 10% effort.
Yeah.
If you could avoid anything, guys, as a new coach, avoid that mistake I just made.
Yeah.
No, if
I
you
would
don't
highly
set
advocate.
initial boundaries, like people will
Yeah, dude.
not bother with them for you. Like they don't
Setting
care.
boundaries initially is pretty important.
You should have like, see, there's a time and
Longevity
place
as
for.
well.
Yeah, there's a time and place for you where you're like, you kind of have to do the grunt work now when you're new to the field.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of have to do things. You have to work more. You have to do things more often. You have to do things you might not like. But like, you still have to set certain boundaries where you're like, yeah, this is not okay with me. Where like
Yeah.
you're doing things like this. And I'm telling you, like the more people don't respect you as a coach, the more they'll start overshooting and the more they'll max out randomly without telling you.
Yeah.
That's the reason. That is kind of the reason why most people think I'm so strict and I'm so this thing, right?
Yeah.
It's because like I won't let them go if they do something like that. I'll just tell them they can just go fuck off. And people don't expect that because they're like, but like how can you remove a client? Very easy to do that.
Yeah. Like I
Right,
asked
because
Akash. Yeah, go on.
no, because people think like usually it's a lifter that fires the coach. The coach doesn't just fire people, right? So
Yeah.
when I do that, it's like a
It's very
complete shock
jarring.
for.
Yeah.
No, it's a complete shock for them. They're like, oh, I didn't know I could be removed.
And as someone who recently did that, I would just say like it is very, very relieving for your mentality as well.
It is because then you understand that you tried your best. They are not doing their things. You are still under control of what's happening here.
Yeah.
You're not okay.
And the
You
gun
have
from
some
your head
integrity.
slowly just lowers.
You have you have like that integrity where you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not okay with certain things of the way that these people do. So you don't tolerate it anymore. You're okay with you're not okay with being disrespected anymore. Because that's also one way of being disrespected, where you're like, like the guy doesn't listen to you and he's just doing whatever he feels like, whatever he wants. Yeah. It's not a good thing.
Because
It's
a
just
friend
pissing
of
all over your process. Yeah, well, sorry.
a friend of like we all like know him, like Akash. I asked him if I could like talk about this here. He was telling me
Send
about
me the
this.
voice notes.
Yeah. It's a
Jesus.
my God, bro. So there's like a guy that he had, and this is like something. This is a very cool example that it shows what we are talking about here.
It's
There's a guy
insane what he asked.
There's a guy he had who's currently at like a 500 kilo total or something. He has like heavy external, like not really a young guy either, and he just sent him a voice note saying that I want to reach a 700 total in 8 months and I want to place first in my states. Which is like, at a point you'll be like, yeah, okay, whatever, like you're a new guy. Okay, I'll help you understand why and what like the issue is with that and how we can approach it. Just setting expectations. Then like, as like Kaushal said, there needs to be like a point of respect there, because like this guy then replies by saying that like you're my coach and I expect the best. So like you telling me that this is not possible is just, I can just take my business elsewhere or something like that. And then after a point you're like, excuse me, what?
But his request was reasonable.
No, I mean, if the guy says something like that, your response should just be like, then go somewhere else. Go take your business someplace else. No, you have to
because
say that. You can't just say that like, no, don't leave. I don't know what will I do without you. You should never be like that with these people.
Yeah.
People like that, you should never be like that. You should always let them know that they're very easily replaceable.
Yeah. Because what they'll do is like they'll go to someone else and someone may enable that behavior. And
they don't understand. That's them getting scammed. They can go get scammed elsewhere. They can go get scammed elsewhere, not here.
Yeah.
Because like even setting expectations and spending that much effort, and like the way he did it as well, like that much effort and trying to make them understand, that by itself is like a sign of just you caring. Because as you said, like if there's somebody else who just doesn't care as much, like yeah, sure, whatever, but you can get to 700. Just stay with me for 8 months.
Yeah. And I saw the paragraph Akash wrote, dude. I was like, God damn,
bro. Like exactly.
I would have just like replied with lol.
I mean, those are the things you do when you're kind of new in the industry and you're young. Because I also used to reply like that. I used to send people like big explanations, explaining things, and some people just don't want to understand. They don't care. Like they want to hear what they want to hear.
That's true.
I've had many conversations like that with people as well. And then at some point I understood that it's absolutely useless. Like I don't want to argue with anybody who's stupid. I just say you're right and I move on.
Yeah.
I just want to be like, you can do that. There are times when even I have told, like, I don't think I'm good enough to get you there, so you should go somewhere else.
I
It
shared
just
about
makes
once
them feel. It
Kaushal
just
told
makes
me
them
that.
feel so much better. They can't blame you for it because you are
Yeah.
accepting that you're not as
Yeah.
good as that, and then they can't say anything. So everything is on their court. You're just like, yeah, I mean, it's not. I
You
don't think
just
I
like
can
hit
do
them
that,
with
man.
the
I'm
truth
sorry.
directly. There's no sugarcoating.
Yeah. You're just like, I don't. Maybe you can do it, but not. Maybe I can't. I don't think I can do it. So maybe you can just go to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then they can't sit there and blame you and be like, no, he said like this, he said that. He just said that, yeah, he can't do it. So I'll go somewhere else.
If you wanna go,
Yeah,
you can go. Like
just go.
shit like
Yeah,
that.
you can go. Just go.
Yeah, I think one of the most important thing, he told me like early on, Kaushal was just telling me, it's like if a guy gets into a lengthy DM debate with you, just say, yeah, you're right, and double heart that thing.
Yeah.
It's the best. Just do that shit. Because a guy once messaged me out some biomechanics stuff, and I was just like, he wrote this long paragraph, and I was like, yep, that's it.
I refuse to waste my time with that. I'll go do something else. I'll just be like, yeah, you're right. Whatever it is, you're right. I don't even know what you're talking about, but you're right. That's the best way to go on, like, with your this thing, because mentally you'll also be like, because then you don't have to go to your friends and be like, man, I talked to this guy, is fucking irritating motherfucker. You don't even have to do that. You're just like, yeah, I just got this DM, I don't know, I just said you're right and I moved on. That's it.
Yeah.
You'll be so much happier that way. You don't have to sit there and be like, the kind of people that I have to deal with, my god, so irritating. You don't have to do any of that, because I used to
Why
do that
get your
before.
cortisol up?
Yeah, I used to do that before, where I used to get like so frustrated and be like, why don't these people understand? Why don't they listen? I'm trying to help them out. But then at some point, you're just like, they don't want the help. It's okay. It's fine. We can be
You just
happy.
become more zen over time. You're like, yeah, I don't really care about anybody outside of like, yeah.
Because a bro DM'd me
Yeah.
about arthrokinematics, and I was like, he asked me about arthrokinematics and implementation on human. I remember this because he was human biomechanics in a dynamic environment. I was just like listening to that, and I was like, the guy you're coaching who doesn't listen to any of your instructions does not care about the shit. Neither do I now. I'm not gonna sit here and read the papers you cited. I'm just not interested in that shit. I have to go pay taxes.
It's like, yeah, if you pay me to read the papers,
I still wouldn't do it.
No, I
Like,
still
honestly.
wouldn't do. I won't do that even then. Even no amount of money is going to make me sit here and argue with idiots.
No, because like while I was not in the field at that point of time, it's a thing that like Kaushal and I would just sometimes discuss, where he'd be like, sometimes people will argue fundamentals, right? Like they'll just want to argue fundamentals for the sake of having a conversation, right? And you enabling that will like ruin your like mental peace, right? Like, when Akash sent me that thing, I like, Akash, if you're watching like this part, like, I prayed for you, dude, because you legit gave that guy the most respectful response humanly possible.
literally, I think I did reply with like, when he sent me that, the first thing I think I sent him was like, lol. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah,
like, it's the
dude.
first thing I said
Like
in the morning.
the way he was trying to gaslight Akash, saying like, this is not what I expect from a coach. I'm like, what do you want to do, dude? Like, Akash should have just told him like, okay, listen, I have a secret program but it's 10 lakh rupees, right?
I'm just gonna charge you like 5 times extra. Right? I'm gonna change your program a little bit, and then like, yeah. I can give you like
Boom. Dude, that's crazy, dude. God bless Akash.
Honestly, yeah, that's mad. And what else? Well, this was like a little here and there, but like I actually like this one. Like, we did talk about deloads as well, right? We did do a whole part on that as well. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else that you want to add right now? Talk about like related to the off season, the deload, athlete mindset.
Find a hobby outside of lifting.
Yeah, that's good.
Please.
Yeah, just make sure your daily routine is the same. As in, like, wake up times and sleep times is the same, and the way you eat relatively is mostly the same. But also during your rest days, just have something that you can do outside of training. Because then when you're in the gym, then you're just focused on finishing and leaving. You shouldn't feel like you're at the gym the whole day.
Yeah.
Or like most of your life is just consumed, because then you feel like you have no time for yourself.
Yeah.
And then you start making time, and that's where you start eating into your sleep schedule. You're like, I want to stay awake a little later because I felt like I don't have the day for myself. That kind of situation.
That is the fucking truth, though.
No, that's something that I faced a lot before, because like I would work so much because I was responding all the time to people, and at one point it felt like, what the fuck, I have no time to do anything for myself.
Yeah.
So it just got so annoying to the point where like I don't have time to go spend with my wife, nothing. Like, we wouldn't be going anywhere outside. We wouldn't watch any movies, do nothing. At that point of time, you're just, at one point, you just sit and you're like, I think I've done enough here.
Quality of life goes down.
Yeah. When your own life feels like, oh, I'm not doing anything else other than this, like I just want a break, that's when you need to take a step back
So the
and be like,
coach
yeah,
is a
enough.
human, no? Coach is a human as well, right? Like I would say that do things outside of like lifting as well, guys. Like because at some point or the other, lifting will involve the element of plateaus and like injuries. And if your entire existence is like anchored into this one outcome of like E1 RMs or like absolute load, as some absolute dog shit that's gonna happen in your life.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I think we did all of the topics, right? Let me just like double check once. And like we can do the questions ka thing. I got like a few questions here for today. Not really I should have posted the question thing yesterday, honestly. But yeah.
Sir, slot, sir, back pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Managing expectations between meets, I think we did touch upon that as well. Yeah, we did everything. So when it comes to like questions, I'll just go about like them in terms of like how interesting kind of they were. One of them, if I scroll here, it was what for you is the minimum amount of time that you'd keep somebody on a program like before considering a change? Like, is there a minimum amount of time? For like, yeah, I'll actually let you guys go.
Minimum amount of time obviously will be just 1 week, because if you sent out a week of training, depending on whether that person needs anything urgently to change, we won't change
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, as it always comes down to that, it's like depending on the communication of the person, depending on what's happening, why it's happening, then we'll make the change. See, because like the question is a little vague. It's not asking whether there's a specific scenario here. There are multiple scenarios that we can think of, right? If a lifter needs a change because, like, or for example, like they'll say something like, suddenly my parents are forcing me for a trip, I don't know what to do. Then there is a change there. Like, what can you do on the trip? Can you go to the gym in the first place? If you can't go to the gym, maybe we do something else. Like, no SBD, you don't have access to SBD. Okay, then we just do something else, right? If you like, we just do whatever you are capable of doing at that within that constraint. But if you don't, then we don't have to change anything unless and until we feel like at least we run 1 or 2 blocks with that structure and then see whether you're responding. And again, it comes down to communication based on like how you're feeling and what's happening. Like, suggestions also on your end have to make sense. You have to be able to tell the coach like why you feel like this needs to change, and only if it makes sense, then we'll make the change, like that.
Yeah, weird question. It's basically asking that like some people seem weaker after their off season. Why do you think that occurs?
Weaker after the off season, as in?
Yeah, I
They would have
don't
Probably
understand the full point of it. Yeah,
probably just bad training in general then.
the
Because
qualities they
like
need wouldn't have been
post
focused on.
post a competition, you kind of just go back to the drawing board, and then you're sitting there and thinking about what you can do
I
better
think
for
like
the
maybe
next
they're
round.
asking why do like some people perform well maybe during the off season itself and then like they perform worse during the meet. I think that's kind of what they were trying to ask.
I would argue they changed their program too much.
Yeah.
Like they would think like when you're getting in season, like again, Anthony McNaughton's like a perfect example, right? You think like he would have that structure and they would just like taper into that or train into the meet. Like Sean Norega has a lot of examples. I think people sometimes will take what works and they'll think, okay, now I have to intensify this thing.
Yeah.
You may just need a bit, right? But people will take a program like this and then do that, and they'll just like do this insane amount of intensity out of nowhere. And then you're like, oh, hey, Kaushal, like traditional like block periodization, kind of this pure block periodization kind of approach, right? Where you need to have like the programs have to look significantly distinct, does more harm than good to people, right?
Yeah.
Because the dose, yeah.
That's why no one does that anymore.
Exactly.
No coach does
Exactly.
like pure block periodization anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
Because like the dose response relationship that was helping your E1RM stand up is the environment for the
Yeah.
athlete to grow.
No, that's what
Right.
people don't understand. It's like it is the overall structure within the whole week that allows things to show up on the primaries, right? So
Exactly.
even if like usually when people do this thing where they're like off-season training is building things really well, and they feel like, as Jay said, like they feel like they have like the coach has to like heavily intensify something. Now they have to do it for the sake of peaking, right? You don't have to change multiple things or many things too much when you're peaking. Maybe just a little bit here and there. If things are already allowing the E1RM to show up really well, then you don't really need to change anything there. Even if you're like heading into a peak, unless maybe you might want to see in situations where like certain exercises might be giving more fatigue, so maybe kind of pull back there so that the SBD can show up a little better. Or even in some cases, Jay said like PL is like very in its purest form like of programming, right? It's very good that way.
yeah.
If like I had a guy who whose squats would like really show up if he would do front foot elevated split squats the day before. And when we remove that, his squats like would feel very flat. So then in that situation, if you're peaking and then in most traditional peaks, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't need these accessories. I'm just going to focus more on SBD work. And then you remove that front foot elevated split squat for somebody like that.
Yeah.
Then his squat just tanks. And then he's like, why is my squat looking like that? It's not feeling too good. And then you start looking for the solution elsewhere. Whereas if it's already showing up, then why would you remove it?
Yeah.
Right. And that
You're
again
stripping
has to
away
be from
things.
the athlete.
Yeah.
Like they have to tell you, like, yeah, when we had FFES in the program, I felt like my squat would feel a lot poppier. I would feel a lot more pop in the leg. They have to tell you that because you can't magically just decide, like, I don't understand. It's not like we changed too much because it's only the front foot elevated split squat that I changed. Maybe the secondary day I have put in too much volume or I've not put in enough volume, something like that. That's where your mind usually goes to. Because end of the day, you're looking at that SBD frequency and hyper, like
Having
how
that sort of
SBD.
just awareness as an athlete should help.
Yeah, that's what the good communication part is. Like the athlete should be able to just be like, yeah, this is what I did, coach, last time, and this is what we did this time. I feel like maybe that could have been an issue, and then you're like, oh yeah, that could be right.
Yeah,
So and
because
also,
I think people want to like I said, they just throw away the entire environment or ecosystem that allowed them to grow.
yeah,
And then they just like see, I would always tell people like there's a dose response relationship, right? If the dose administered through the current microcycle structure is allowing for a positive response in terms of performance, like you just changing the entire nature of the dose, right? Like Norman's recent video about like you're changing the goalpost about like each block, you're changing the stop and thing, right? And you're kind of almost like forcing load. Like we all know guys who run triples and like doubles and then singles, and you always realize when they ran the triples, their structure was like really good and they were making, but like they would try to force and like intensify everything for no reason. They burn out. That dose response relationship might not be a requirement for that person.
Yeah. The next one, I have a feeling this was, and we've answered this throughout the episode, but how would you coach someone to gauge RP and teach them how much load would go on the bar on a day? Teaching
yeah,
someone how to gauge RP.
that's like entirely purely skill based. Like
Mm-hmm.
you give it time, you learn what it means. So for you to even understand like what you can considerably capably push, you need to know what your actual limitations are. So for that,
Limitation,
usually
yeah.
in your initial stages of your career, I would suggest like actually knowing what failure feels like, and not like actual failure in the sense like you go and die. I mean to say like push sets close to failure, or at least like an actual RP10 where you don't fail the set, but you're like, you're actually like learn how to grind things out, and then you'll understand like
Yeah.
this is what I'm capable of, this is what I can do, and then you'll understand like, yeah, this is a range that I can play within to make things show up.
Yeah, because you will never understand your limitations if you don't like at least dip your feet in the water, right?
Yeah.
So, but then again, like you will kind of see like sometimes, I don't know, this will be like again sometimes guys will just use this as a proxy to just like consistently do dumb shit and like consistently
Right.
push their limits. And it's like a fine line, I suppose.
Yeah. And for the auto regulation thing again, like as I mean, this is just something I like to do. I don't know, like Ajay, I think maybe you do that as well. Like you begin with helping them with more of like suggested loads, and then moving on to instead of suggested load ranges, just putting a load cap and then allowing them to choose below that, and then eventually just like allowing them to choose on their own completely. I found that to be pretty effective. Just to teach people how to actually just choose weights on their own auto regulation. There's only one more, which was like askable. There's like a few other, but like pretty stupid. One more, which was like, why do coaches have coaches? I think this is like a very popular question. Like a lot of people ask this. And if you guys want to begin, yeah.
I
Because
have
you
like
you always have somebody else who knows more than you, who's better than you, so that you can learn from them. And also when it comes to your own training or your own life, you might not be as objective because you have your emotions
Yeah.
coming into decision making. So you might sit there and think like, oh, this thing, even if 1 week doesn't go well, you'll start sitting there and thinking like, no, I need to change everything because that's not
Yeah.
required maybe. So you'll just sit there and be like, I need to do this, I need to do that, and your coach will be like, you need to relax, and then you'll just relax because you're like, yeah, my coach told me he'll handle it, right? So you don't have to think about or stress about your own things. You'll be feeling a lot better with your own things when you have somebody else handle these things for you. and you get the opportunity to learn and see things from a different lens. Like you might have the same educational background and understanding as your coach, maybe, because most people, maybe they graduated from same university, they did the same degree, they read the same kind of books. That might be similar. But then as you grow, like over time, you're just like, somebody has a very unique way of looking at a certain problem or how to solve a problem, and you might get access to their thought process, right?
Just their framework being different.
Yeah. When you're like, "Oh, you did this, which is something that I wouldn't have done. So why do you do that?" And then they'll be like, "Yeah, I feel like this is something that you can do. This is something that you can improve on. Maybe like that's the reason why I gave it." And that opens another avenue for you to understand, like, yeah, this is another way of doing things.
Yeah.
Objectivity is like a very big thing for, like, when people ask me this, that's like one of the major points that I would consider. It's just for just knowing myself, like the way I feel objectivity is one of the most common reasons I would say why you need a coach. Like no matter, like, even if you do know, I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, after a point there'll come like a point in your training where there'll be too many emotions involved, as you just said, and at that point, knowing what to do for yourself, you may be able to handle it very well. For other people, being like a third party, just a third perspective, but like for yourself, there's always like a little bit of a bias involved, which you don't want for good progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because see, as much as people think like I have my shit together, I also get very upset when things don't go well for me training wise.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not so like interested anymore in like competing and stuff like that, but I still want to be strong.
Yeah.
So when my sessions don't go too well, I also get pretty upset. So that's still there for me as well. But if I were to do it for myself, I would just get very upset and flustered. But if I had somebody else handling it for me, I would just be like, yeah, that, like, let them do their thing.
It's done. We're done with the session, going home.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
like,
Just
somebody else
just give your feedback to the coach. Let that guy figure out why it happened, what happened, and just move on. That's gonna help you.
So like I also like I still like have mentorship calls with Norman as well, because sometimes
Yeah.
I'll just think of some stuff, and like Norman once told me, like, I have a tendency to create monsters that don't exist, or like fears that shouldn't exist. Right? He just tells me, it's like, you had a block with someone that didn't go according to plan. I've had like 8 of them, right? Just in the last month, because of the breadth of like experience he may have, right? I always love the fact that he gives so much perspective on things, and he can always learn, dude. Like I honestly, like the way, like, for example, he taught me how to think, and I like people can teach you things all the time, and like sometimes like I'll work with a guy called Ben on like strength and conditioning, but like on technical aspect, because he is the best like striking athlete in India at this point. It's like he gives me so much of value just in terms of that stuff. And I was like, at some point, I want to kind of work with him to get back into boxing shape and stuff like that. Could I train myself? Probably get in shape, but I don't think I'd ever make a right decision choice in that situation, especially knowing my temperament. It's just not something I have it in me. Matt Bernard and Mike Teixeira are the exceptions, I'd say.
Yeah. We also talked about this last podcast where we talked about how, it's a matter of integrity also to handle or hand people out to somebody else in things that you are not good at. Yeah. So you just just because I am a coach, it doesn't mean that I know everything that is related to this field. It's not like that. Like, I'll have a coach, or like my coach will have a coach, somebody else will have a coach, everybody will have a coach for different reasons. Sometimes you need it for accountability purposes. Sometimes you don't want to do something, but just because that person is there, you'll do it. Sometimes you'll do a very good job of things because you don't have to have the mental pressure of thinking about what to do next. Your coach will just tell you.
Yeah.
You have a bad session and then you stop. You don't sit there at the corner of the gym like, I don't know what to do, I'm not understanding what to do. You just send your coach and you move on, because then your coach will respond when they
you have somebody with a clear mind looking at that stuff.
Yeah. They objectively, they'll just be like, yeah, man, you gotta do this better. When they sit and talk to you, then you'll be like, yeah, you know what? Like, yeah, I need to do that better. I'm actually not doing that well. Because I'll tell you, like, I had this guy, like one example that I can think of. So there was this guy that I was coaching who was very inconsistent. Right? Like, the guy would train, I don't know, he would take like 3 weeks or 4 weeks just to finish 1 week of 1 week of training. Yeah, and then he randomly came up to me one day and he's like, I've been with you for like 4 months or 6 months now, but I haven't really seen any progress yet. And I'm like, yeah, obviously not, because you're not training consistently. And he's like, no, but I think I've been consistent. I was like, who the fuck are we kidding? Can we go take a look at how many weeks it's been since I've sent you each training week? And then he looked at it and he was like, yeah, I didn't even realize that.
I didn't knew.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous how, like, you miss even something like that. But then, what else can you say?
Like, it's like that, like you skip one session, sets a precedent, and then eventually it's just like subconsciously, and you're like, one day you're like, oh, I've skipped so many. And
you want someone to give you a reality check, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That is like, man, this is what I'd say. Like, coaching someone is actually a lot. I would say programming is an important fact, but just like There's a lot of psychology involved in it.
Yeah, just being able to, I don't know, communicate with human beings. If I were to simplify it, effectively being able to communicate, that's something that helps a lot.
Because you can see the way like someone talks about themselves. If you coach someone properly, they start to talk about themselves differently. They start to see themselves in a light they may not have seen before. All right. And that's where I think like in powerlifting, like again, my boxing coach was not the most educated man in terms of like formal education. But God, like, was he a good human being? Like he could like a dog shit athlete like me, he could make me believe in myself, right? So like I'd always like thank him for stuff. I think coaches are like that in that capacity, right? They give you the hard news, they help you like soften a blow when needed. But at the end of the day, like everyone needs someone to kind of confide into, unless you're Mike
Just
Tyson.
be there for them, somebody to, yeah.
I always used to ask, like, I asked Matt when I once, like, how do you do this? And he's just like, what he just messaged me saying brick by brick. I was like, okay, shit,
Sewing.
yeah, reaping and sowing shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I suppose that is about everything, lads. Is there anything else, guys?
No. I mean, any other questions?
No, that's.
Oh yeah, anything else? Guys, find a hobby, guys. Like, to everyone watch it. Find a hobby, right?
Find a hobby.
Mm.
Read a book. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
Just tell people in your life that you love them, right? And the ones that you don't, make sure they know that you don't love them.
Yeah.
It's all a hobby, right? Even being a hater is a hobby.
Yeah. It's a full-time job. But yeah.
You know?
All right. So I think that's it. This one also
Yeah,
went
guys.
up to like close to 3 hours.
Thank you, cuties, for staying this long.
I have a feeling we're gonna like split this into like two or three parts as well. So
15 parts.
yeah. So yeah, if you stuck around till now, I hope you were able to I don't know, extract a lot of value from this episode as well. Because like again, response from last one was great. Let's see how this one, like how you guys feel with this one. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We spoke about everything. We took some questions as well. Just one thing, like if you guys have any questions that you like would want us to discuss at the end, because I'm thinking we're gonna make this a regular thing. You can just shoot us a DM. Like you don't need to wait for the stories to show up, because like the circulation is going to be a little less when we just put it on the stories.
Yeah.
So you can shoot a DM to the main Instagram account on Project StrengthCast, and if it's valid, we'll have your question on the next one. And I
guys,
think that's pretty much it.
Invest in the pay block right now. This is not financial advice. It's just a suggestion. Right?
Yeah.
Right. But thank you everyone for sticking along for this long. Go out, touch grass. Again, tell people you love that you love them. Right? And yeah.
And we will see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.